start, because I'm doing 2 cards. I'm only doing 1 lot of stenciling. Oh dear. But I am doing 2 cards, and then I want to go through something before I start. Okay, so first off, let's just run through what I'm going to be using today. I have to say, this is beautiful. It's one of my favourite poinsettia stencils and embossing folders that Lisa's bought out, because you don't have to have it as a corner, and you can have it as a corner. You can just emboss it, you could just stencil it, and there's so many options, as there are with all of Lisa's things. So we're using those, and I think I've used the die cut on one and just the embossing folder and the stencils on the other. So all 3 on one and just 2 on the other. I'm also using the Snowflake Flurry, and that's more or less as a sort of a background on one of the cards. Okay, there is so much detail on this. The number of layers in this is just incredible, and it's just a superb folder. Another absolute favourite. My squares arrived, yay! These are so fabulous. I love these. I've taken mine off the backing card, and all I would say is there's a right way and a wrong way that they will sit. So as you take them off the backing card, on the back I'd just put a little mark at the top so that you know which way round they are all the time, and then that way if you're using them for matting and layering, you're always going to get them the right way round. Okay, so I do that with any nesting die where there's I think the other ones, the torn edge circles, they're the same. There is a definite place where they line up, so I've just put a little mark on mine so that they always line up. Okay, so that's those. And then I'm using 2 different die sets. This is an older one, as you can see by the number. This is the latest one, but you know, I think I've used the Noel out of this set. I was going to use the Merry and Bright on my second card, but it didn't quite fit right, and I didn't like how it looked, so I've used the Happy Christmas on that one. I've used the nested stitch bubble squares on my second card. The torn edge squares are on my other card. So that's what I'm using today. But before I make a start, I just wanted to run through the ornamental lattice die set. There have been several questions in the group over the last few days about people asking how they make the ornamental lattice frame into a card. Right? So what I thought I would do is cut to and show you. Right? And it's so easy. It really is so easy. All you've got to make sure of is that the way you cut it, this layer and the layer underneath, you always have to have it facing forward. Alright, so if I just bring this up slightly, I don't know whether you can see, there is texture on this card. It's a linen card. If I just move it around a little bit, you can see the texture on there, can't you? And that's the front piece. On the second piece, the texture is on the other side. Okay, so I've cut it on the opposite side to the texture, and that's because I want the texture to be on the outside at the back of this card. I've cut this one on the reverse of the texture card so that the texture shows on the back of the card. Alright, so whichever way you look at it, your texture is on the outside, and that way your lattice will always line up perfectly. See, there is nowhere on there that you can see that it isn't lined up. Okay, and then when you want to make a card out of it, on the back piece, just put a score line about, I don't know, ½ an inch down on the inside of the frame, but make sure you go all the way across, and then just fold it and score it, you know, just burnish that score line, and then when you stand it up, that will bend slightly and it will provide you with the stand part of your card. Alright, let me do it. Let me actually do it. I'll show you what I mean. So if I put a score line down here, so about here, And just be careful when you're scoring the actual lattice bits, because you don't want to rip them. Go all the way across on that score line, like that. Okay, just shift that out of the way. And then you can see the score line across there. Okay, just bend it. It will bend on its own because you've scored it. And just gently score those lines. Okay. And then when you glue them together, that score line will provide your stand part. Okay, can you see that? This piece here is going to give you your stand. Okay, so all you're doing is gluing here and probably in the bigger parts of the lattice on here so that it's secure, sticking those two together, and then using your back one as your stand. Okay, you can do it portrait or you can do it landscape. You can do it exactly the same the other way round. That's as easy as it is. It isn't difficult at all. And the other way, if you don't want a lattice back, you could just cut a solid piece of card so that your backing piece is solid, and do exactly the same on there. Just score the back piece, and that again will give you the stand for your card. But make sure if you've got a textured card or double-sided card, so like there's colour on one side and white on the other, and you want the colour on the outside, make sure you cut the card on the reverse. Okay, that's as easy as difficult as it gets. Okay, I've used traditional Christmas colours on this one. Okay, purely and simply because I'd seen a post in the group. Somebody had put a poinsettia card in the group, and I'm not sure what inks they'd used because they didn't actually say what inks they'd used, but they said that the red wasn't deep enough. So what I thought I would do is use red, but show you how I make it deeper. Okay, I just use a different colour underneath. So let's get stuck in. Let's do the stenciling. Okay, so my green, now there are 3 stencils that have got leaves on them, but I only want to use 2 colours. Okay, so my first colour is the Woodland Moss, which is from the first set of blending inks. Lovely green, this nice olivey green, and I'm using that on this first stencil. But what I'm going to try and do is not go too deep. Okay, I want a nice sort of solid green, but I don't want it to be too deep in colour. So this is my first layer, and like I said, using Woodland Moss, I'm using my Wonder Brushes because they give a really lovely coverage and they're quick. Okay, so that's my first layer. Nice green that. Okay, number 2, I'm going in with the same colour, but I'm going to go really, really deep with this one. So I'm going to put a layer on, but I'm going to go really, really heavy. Okay, and what I might do is when I get to the end down here, I might go back and just top it up. But I want this to be quite heavy in colour so that you get a contrast in the leaves. All the leaves look a different colour, and then when I do the next layer of leaves, that's going to be a completely different green so that it gives you a nice contrast of colour. So let me just make sure. I think I might go over that again because I want it a bit deeper than that. And of course you can always drag the colour off your stencil through into those apertures, which will help deepen that colour without actually adding any more ink. But I want this to be really quite deep. That's better. See how you've got 2 different greens there, but it's actually exactly the same green. So my next green is going to be the Summer Garden Shimmer. I just adore this colour. I don't know what it is about it. It is just a fabulous, fabulous green. Okay, so I'm going to go in with this Summer Garden Shimmer. I'm going to go quite heavy, but as these dry out while you're doing them, you'll see that sort of that mica effect appearing in front of your very eyes. Very clever. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this first layer and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a second layer. Now I'm using my stencil brushes with these because I don't want to use the sponges, because the sponges do give a really good depth of colour, but sometimes it can leave your stencils a little bit wet, and I don't want that. I want this to be sort of more or less dry as I've finished it. So I do like the sponges, and they are very quick and very easy to use, but for this I'm going to stick with my brushes. Okay, so that's number 3. See, now I've got 3 different greens on there, but I've only used 2 colours, and I just love that you can get that effect depending on how much pressure you put onto your card through those apertures. It's just brilliant. Okay, so now I'm coming in and I'm going to do the base of the flowers. Alright, now I am going to start with red, because my other colour is going to come on the next layer where I put some of the petal detail in. Okay, but these little berries here, let's do those first actually. The little berries I want purple as opposed to red. I don't know why, I just thought I fancy purple instead of red. So I'm going to go in here with my Sweet Violet, which is from set 2 of the blending inks, and I like the Sweet Violet as opposed to the Spiced Plum because I just think it's a more vivid purple. And you'll notice that whenever I take my ink, I'm taking it from the lid, because these first berries I want to be reasonably light, because my next stencil also has berries on and I want those to be darker. Okay, so that's my berries. Then I'm going to come in with my red, and again I'm going back to my Wonder Brushes, and I'm going to come in and fill that aperture with my red ink. Okay, I am going sort of all the way to the edge. Don't have to worry about coming over the edge here because I'm going to cut it out. So, but if you weren't cutting it out, you'd need to be aware of that. So I'm just going to fill this in with my red, and then before I take this off, I am just going to come in with a stencil brush with the same red just on the edges, just to deepen the colour on the edges there. I'm doing that all the way around. I'm not being particularly careful, I'm not placing it, I'm just going round just to deepen those edges, similar to what Claire did on her anthracite ones last week. Okay, that's that one. Same again on this one, and again you can take the ink off the stencil as well, just to brush it into those apertures, just to give you a little bit of depth on the edges of those petals. Okay, so that's my that's my first layer. Then I'm going to come in with the detail on the flowers and those other berries. Okay, so if I do the berries first, there's my purple. And I'm going to go quite heavy here because I want these to be a different shade of purple to the first set. Okay, and then I'm going to go in, I'm going to add purple to the middle of this flower, which sounds a bit crazy, but trust me, when you've finished, it'll be worth it. So I'm going to use my Wonder Brush. I'm going to start in the middle and I'm going to work my way out. So I'm starting in the middle with my Sweet Violet and working my way out. Okay, and I'm not going all the way to the edges of those petals. Okay, same on both flowers. Obviously there'll be more near the edge here because it's a smaller flower and I'm using a Wonder Brush, but I'm not worried about that. Okay, so that's layer 5. So what I'm going to do over the top of that, before I take my stencil off. So then I'm going to go over the top, but I am going to go all the way to the edge. So I'm adding the red over the top of the purple. Okay, I'm not going to go mad with it, just enough to cover that purple. And then when I take this off, you see how much that has deepened that red. So now you're sort of getting more of a poinsettia red, okay? Then sort of, I know what people mean. It because they're chalk-based inks, as they dry, the colour will fade a little bit, and that's what they're designed to do. So, you know, don't worry about it. Just, if you don't like the colour, just go back, put your stencil back over the top and go over it again. Or, like I've just done, add another colour underneath. Okay, so now I'm going to come in and put my anthracite over the top. Now, because anthracite is quite an intense colour, I am taking quite a bit of the colour off my brush and putting it into the lid, okay? And I want to come over the veins of the leaves with the anthracite. Now, I know the leaves are different colours, but when I've finished, I'm going to lift the stencil slightly, and over the lighter colour leaves, I might go back and add a little bit more anthracite. Because what I found when I did my test piece was that it hadn't showed up particularly well on the lighter colour, which I found a bit odd. Shows up on the darker colour, but it didn't show up on the lighter colour. So we'll just go in and add this detail. And I do love how much detail Lisa puts into these leaves, because for me, this extra little bit of detail just brings these things to life. And I just think if you didn't have this detail, they wouldn't look as good as they do, in my opinion. I just think they're brilliant. So it takes a bit of time because they're small apertures, but it's worth spending a little bit of time just making sure you've filled them all in. So if I lift that up, and I think I'm actually happy with that. Yeah. So you see how that anthracite has sort of just added to those greens in a totally random, different way. Right, so I was going to put anthracite on here, but I changed my mind. So what I thought I would do in the middle of those flowers is add my Summer Garden Shimmer, which is here. Actually, I need a bit of a smaller brush there, I think. So I'm just going to add my Summer Garden Shimmer in the middle here. Because I didn't want to go with yellow, and I didn't want to go as dark as anthracite. And because it's got that mica in, it's going to show up really lovely. So for the veins on the petals, what I thought I would go with is the Regal Grey Shimmer, which is from set 2 of the Interference inks. And I just think this is, I mean, I know it looks purple. It isn't, it's grey. If I put this on here, you'll see it's grey. When it's on white, it's grey, okay? But the purple shimmer in here does show through a little bit on the grey, and I like that, especially on top of red. I think it just lifts those veins. Well, you'll see what I mean when I've added it in, because I just think it was the right colour to go with. I think anthracite would have been a little bit too dark for what I wanted. So I just did have I was going to use cobblestones, and then I saw this one and I thought, do you know what, actually I think I'll go with this because it'll give me that extra little bit of lift with that shimmer. And I'm glad I did, because it really, really works, in my opinion. Okay, so I'll just finish those veins. And then you can see, dotted around here, there are extra little dots. And those are the sort of, the little seed heads on those berries. And again, with those, what I thought I would do is go in with the anthracite. Let me just check those veins, make sure I'm happy before I take that off. Yeah, I think so. So put that to one side, and then we'll go in with this anthracite. And because the holes are tiny, I'm going to go quite heavy because I actually want this ink to just pop through those little apertures. So heavy is good on occasion, okay? As long as you're careful. And the anthracite will just sort of lift those little berries perfectly. Well, I think they do. Okay, so let's lift that off. So that's number 7. I like that. So then I need to cut it out. But if I just show you, you see how the red has sort of deepened quite a lot from sort of an ordinary red. If I put ordinary red onto textured card, you can see that red, even though you go quite deep with it, it's always that beautiful bright red. And when you're looking at poinsettias, you want a little bit of depth on your colour, because they're not a really vibrant bright red, are they? And I think putting the purple underneath really works. So let me put my die on here, and then we're going to run it through, and then we can pop it into the embossing folder and emboss it. Okay, I think that's really, really lovely. I'm happy with that. Okay, so let's line it up in our embossing folder. Quite easy, but just take a little bit of time. Make sure you're happy with how it's lined up. Just hold it in one position down the bottom here. And then fasten your folder. Okay, remember to change your plate combination. Okay. How cool is that? I think that is fabulous. The detail on that is just incredible, don't you think? It's just beautiful, beautiful. I'm really happy with that. So, for my base card is an 8x8. Let's move this out of the way, don't need that again. My base card is an 8x8. So I've used the nested bubble squares, and I've used the third one in, I think, for my base, and I've used Lisa's satin card for the base. And then I've used the second bubble layer and cut my card, and then popped it into the snowflake flurry. You can see that there. Look at the detail on that, isn't that incredible? And if you wanted to just ink over the top, I was in two minds whether to just lightly ink over the top just to lift those snowflakes, but I thought, no, I don't want to make it too busy, so I decided against that. So my poinsettia corner is coming down here, so let's put my pads on the back, which won't take long. Obviously I've already put my pads on the back of my embossed piece and my satin card, just to save a little bit of time. Don't need many on here really. And then take those off. Okay, so that's going down there, and I'm going to put it right near the edge, just because I think it looks better, and it'll give me more room for my sentiment. Okay, and then my sentiment, like I said, is from that Deck the Halls set, and I've only used 2 layers on here, but what I did was I inked a piece of the texture card, Lisa's white texture card, with the woodland moss, and then I went over the top of it with Summer Garden Shimmer, and then the top bit here is just the Strawberry Sundae, and I've backed that onto satin card, and that's just going to go here. Okay, now I think I will just see if I've got enough 3D glue gel to stand it up a little bit, and then pop that up the top here. And because I've used the same colours that I've used in here, it should really tie it in quite nicely. Okay, and because I've used 3D glue gel, it will just sit up slightly on that card, and I just think that looks, I just think it's worth lifting a sentiment, just to make it look a little bit different really. Okay, so then I thought, well, I'll stencil another one, and what can I do that's different? So I thought I'd go with a tunnel card. I took quite a bit of working out because I'm not sort of mathematically minded at all. But this is a, was just under 6 by 6. I think it's 15 centimetres, 14.5 centimetres squared. Okay, so just under 6 by 6. And I cut one of the torn edge squares in black. Now I am putting this flat on the card, and you will see why in a second, because otherwise it's going to be so tall that you're going to need, I think you probably need a box for this anyway because of the way the layers are, but I just didn't want to put this 3D on top of everything else. So that's my base layer. It's just, I mean, this is cheap black card that I've got in my stash because I haven't got any decent black card. I could really do with some black texture card from somewhere, just saying. Right, so then I stenciled my poinsettia corner and then cut it out. So I cut 3 pieces. These are sticking together because of the pads. So I've cut it into 3 pieces, okay, using those torn squares. Now you can see why I needed to make sure that they were all the right way up, because if I try and line it up and they're not the right way up, it just won't look right. So in order to make sure that this piece, which is my bottom piece, is in the right place, I need to place my other pieces around the edge so that I put that piece in the right place. And I've put different layers of pads on each of these. Now if I'd got enough 3D glue, I would have used 3D glue gel, because then I can make it as deep or as not deep as I want to. So I can now put my bottom piece down. I've already put all my pads on, and this has only got 1 layer of pads on it. This is one of those fiddly cards that is probably worth doing. I'm not sure I'd do very many of them because they are quite time consuming to make sure that you cut them out right and that you layer them right and they look okay. But I think this looks okay. Right, so this is my base one. I'm going to hold those in place and just pop that down in the middle like so. Then I can put all the others around it. Alright, so I can take that one away. Now on this middle layer I've put 2 layers of pads, okay, because I want this to sit a little bit higher than that bottom layer. Right, so making sure you've got it the right way round, obviously. This one is now going to go round the one on the bottom. And you will be able to see a little bit of the black card. That's fine. It all adds to the look of the card, in my opinion. So that's my second layer, and you can see it's higher than the first layer. I suppose if you wanted to make it even more of a difference, you could have put this bottom layer flat onto the black card. Then it would have looked even better. And on this last layer, you can see that I've used 3 layers of pads. Right, I've gone all the way around. Now I just need to make sure that I get it the right way round, that way, and then pop that on the outside of the middle frame, like so. Okay, now I think that looks quite different. So then I've just cut my Noel out of that one set of sentiments, which was from, I think it was last Christmas, and again I've just cut it out of white texture card, but I've inked it with the red ink, and I've done sort of 2 or 3 layers. I was in 2 minds whether to put some clear sparkle over the top, but I decided not to in the end. So then I just put my little Noel in the centre there. And you'll notice that I've turned the poinsettia around, so the poinsettia corner is in a different angle to this one. So you can use it in different ways. I mean, you could have used it across the top if you wanted to, but it's just use it in different ways. You can cut it up as well if you wanted to, because my initial thought with this one was I was going to use the snowflake sort of like that, and I thought I want another poinsettia over here, so I did actually do another piece. I stenciled the whole piece, and I was going to put that there like so, cut it down to fit so that you've got two poinsettias at either end. So you can also just cut it up and mess around with it like that if you wanted to, and I think that looks equally as fabulous. It's just something a little bit different, you know. So lots of ways of using it, but equally as fabulous. So there you go. There's my 2 cards for today. So I hope you like those. Take care of yourselves and have a fabulous week. Bye now.